All right, but let's see how it started anyway. All right, and that's what we're gonna go back to. We're gonna go to Revelation 17, because that's what it says. It says about this beast. You know, this woman that rides the beasts. You know, she's over many waters, man. You know, those waters are nations. You know, don't think that they didn't expand all these. You know, their NATO territory. You know, eastwards. You know, they had it in mind to do that because they know that World War III, the Russians are going to be the so-called bad guy. You know, but who's the bad guy? Really, they're the ones been breaking agreements. All right. And by the way, even what's his name, the Russian president before Putin, Gorbachev, he had concerns about this, and the Americans, you know, just fobbed him off and still started expanding eastward towards countries, all right, that are just near Russia. Okay. Let's go to this video. This video is going to show you about this Treaty of Rome stuff. Alright, have a listen.
Hello, and welcome to History Pod. On the 25th of March 1957, the Treaty of Rome, which laid the foundations for the European Economic Community, was signed by Belgium, France, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and West Germany. The EEC, sometimes referred to in English-speaking countries as the Common Market, was formally established on the 1st of January 1958 and survived, with some changes under the Maastricht Treaty, until 2009, when it was then absorbed into the European Union. The aim of the EEC was to establish economic integration between its members, such as a common market and customs union. However, in reality, the EEC operated beyond purely economic issues, since it also included organisations such as the European Atomic Energy Community that sought to generate and distribute nuclear energy to its member states. The EEC had been preceded by the European Coal and Steel Community, which came into force in 1952. The ECSC sought to amalgamate European coal and steel production in order to reconstruct Europe after the devastation of the Second World War, and to reduce the threat of a future conflict by establishing mutual economic reliance. Within just 3 years, the idea of an actual customs union was then being discussed, with the 1956 Intergovernmental Conference on the Common Market and Euratom establishing the parameters for the later Treaty of Rome. Over time, the EEC expanded its membership, with Denmark, Ireland and the United Kingdom joining in 1973. The 1980s saw the addition of Greece, Spain and Portugal. However, with the creation of the European Union in 1993 and its absorption of the EEC in 2009, the Union now contains 28 states, the most recent member being Croatia, which joined in July 2013.
See that? So you can see how this this beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, it's been expanding. All right, and these are legitimate security concerns that the West has ignored. You know, they've done this on purpose. You know, and the reason why they've done it because the Heavenly Father is in charge. All right. Okay. The Lord controls the king, man. Okay, the Lord controls people. All right, He controls prophecy. Okay, and now it's 28 member states. All right, 28 member states, man. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. All right. So it's clear what they're doing. And this is another reason why many people are seeking alternatives. All right. Because when you have a system that is oppressive, okay, and is hypocritical, you know, etc. And, you know, remember the dollar is the world reserve currency. All right. The whole sanctions, America put sanctions on these different countries, you know, etc. The power that they wield is a lot. So when people are oppressed in one system, they will either join or seek out another system to operate and trade in, one that's fairer. And that's why you have what we call today BRICS. All right. And BRICS has got many different members, you know. Just read a little bit here. BRICS is a group formed by 11 countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, United Arab Emirates, Ethiopia, Indonesia, and Iran. All right. It serves as a political and diplomatic, all right, coordination forum for countries from the global south and for coordination in most of diverse areas. All right. So they're actually hooking up these other countries, and they're saying to America, which is Rome all over again, screw you. All right. Your oppressive system, you know what? We're going to have, you know, an alternative to that, man. Okay. We're going to trade, you know, with each other. And that's what happens, man. You know, and basically what they're doing is, because as I told you, there's 3 world wars in the Bible, and it's not an exaggeration. They're using Ukraine, all right, as a whipping stick to weaken the Russian army. Okay, this whole Ukrainian and Russian war could have been avoided, all right, but they're not going to tell you that. But on the media, if you look at the media objectively, all right, the Ukrainian government under Zelensky, they were actually gunning for a fight. You know, even the weeks before Russia invaded, you know, he was talking shit, saying we got troops at the border, this, that, and the other. As soon as Russia went in, now all of a sudden he's going, oh no, what's going on? You know, the Russians are invading and they're killing our people. You know, help me. He's going around, you know, to Canada, to America, to Europe with his begging bowl. All right, his begging bowl, and asking for help. And he's ungrateful as well. He's ungrateful, man. All right, that's the reason why, what's his name, Donald Trump rebuked him, man, and made him look like a fool. You're gambling with World War III. You don't have the cards right now. I would play that, but it's so funny. I mean, that was a so-called president of a country that was getting grilled like that. You know, they're using Ukraine, all right, as a whipping stick against Russia. They know they're gonna go to war with Russia. They know it's in, you know what I mean? They know it's in the scriptures. All right, they know that's their destiny. So, if Russia has a war, which we will call this a proxy war, all right, and we extend this war as much as possible, A, we make money from it, because we have to sell them weapons, okay, to fight that war, but B, many Russian soldiers are dying as well. So it's going to weaken their military, their numbers, their morale, you know, and this article, alright, goes into this, alright. Let me see here. This is from the Cato Institute. The US and NATO helped trigger the Ukraine war. Alright. It's not siding with Putin to admit it. And that's right. Alright. I'll read a little bit here. Vladimir Putin's decision to launch a full-scale invasion of Ukraine is a monstrous act of aggression that has plunged the world, alright, that's plunged the world into into a perilous situation. By any reasonable standard, his move was an over-the-top response to any Ukrainian or NATO provocations. However, that conclusion is different from saying that there were no provocations, as far too many policymakers and pundits in the West are doing now. And it's true. They're dismissing the Russian argument. Just like that, you know. They're dismissing it. Like it doesn't matter. That's called propaganda, people. Alright? It has become especially fashionable in some circles to insist that NATO's expansion to Russia's border was in no way responsible for the current Ukraine crisis. Yeah, oh, come on, man. Many dismiss all arguments to the contrary as echoing Putin's talking points. Alright? Siding with Putin or circulating Russian propaganda and disinformation, leading aside the ugly misma of Carthyism, alright, enveloping such allegations. An underlying argument is factually wrong. The Russian leaders and several Western policy experts were warning more than 2 decades ago, alright, 2 decades ago, that NATO expansion would turn out badly, ending in a new Cold War with Russia at best, and a hot one at worst. Obviously, they were not echoing Putin or anyone else. George Kennan, alright, George Kennan, the intellectual architect of America's containment policy during the Cold War, alright, perceptively warned in May, in May 2nd, 1998, New York Times interview, what NATO's move eastward would set in motion. Is what he said. I think it is the beginning of a new Cold War, he stated. I think the Russians will gradually react quite adversarially, and it will affect their policies. I think it is a tragic mistake. See? And this was a guy that said this, in 1998. Alright? And that's what they're doing. They're using the war in Ukraine. They don't care about Ukrainian soldiers dying or whatever. You know, all they care about is that, the Russian defense ministry is using up money, time, resources, manpower to fight in Ukraine. If they keep this going, when World War III happens, they'll be weak. That's the goal, man. Alright? That's what they want. Okay? And that goes into prophecy, man. Okay? And this is another article saying the same thing. Because of NATO's expansion eastward, that's another reason why, alright, this war broke out. Okay? But the really reason why it broke out, because the Lord wants it, alright, to break out. Okay? And we go to Revelation 7:1. And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. That great whore, man. Okay? And who's that great whore? America. Alright? America, man. Move it a little bit. There you go. That's the great whore. Alright, it's a representation of America. Okay? That's her right there. And a whore opens her legs to anyone and everyone. And that's what America's done. Why do you think America's got military bases everywhere around the world? Okay. Why do you think they have that? Okay, let me go back now. Yeah, okay. And it says here, Revelation 17:1, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore, America, that sitteth upon many waters. Alright, and what does the waters represent? The waters represents people and nations. Alright, you go further down here in the same chapter to Revelation 17:15. It says, and he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the whore sitteth. Alright, so this is the waters where the whore sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. Tongue mean what? Different languages. Okay, so the waters represents different nations of people. Okay, this great whore is sitting on many waters, controlling, alright, many other nations and people, you know, through her philosophies, you know, her wine, her you know, her doctrine, you know. And also, if you look at American military bases, alright, American military bases around the world, there you go, just a map of it, and look what comes up. They're everywhere, man. You know, look at this map here. They're everywhere. Okay, they're everywhere, man. And why are they everywhere? Because they're the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. You know, and again, that's why these world wars had to happen. Because look, if you look at all these, you know, these diagrams of all these bases they've got around the world, America, all right. Hey guys, this is what U.S. military bases. It's so, you know what? There's so many of them. They're everywhere, man. You know. What countries have U.S. military bases? All right, they have loads of them. They're all around the world. Okay, and there's a reason for that, because if you go back to World War II, who were the Japanese fighting in World War II? They were fighting the Americans. Once they what's it called, dropped that atomic bomb, all right, and made fire come down from heaven. Okay, remember Esau's blessing was a sword. Okay, when Japan signed their surrender, one of the things that they signed is for America to have military bases there. All right, let's see if they've got military bases, American military bases in Japan. Let's see. All right, military bases in Japan. There you go. U.S. Army in Japan. There you go, man. Hunsu, Hokkaido, Karushu. Okay. Now before, there you go. That's the one's a bit clearer. U.S. military bases in Japan. You see. Now before World War II, they didn't have those military bases. Okay, because Japan was a sovereign nation. Okay. So that's an example of them sitting upon many waters. All right, nations of people, you know, different nationalities, different tongues, different languages, man. Okay, their military might is everywhere. Okay, they've got bases in the Middle East, in Qatar. So when Israel had that war with Iran, that 12-day war, and by the way, the Iranians won that war, man. All right, behind closed doors, them small hats, all right, they were begging for a ceasefire because the Iranians were doing some serious damage. It was getting through their Iron Dome. Okay, so that went on for 12 days. Okay, 12 days. But America had military assets around the Middle East to intercept those Iranian missiles. Okay, they have a military base in Qatar. Okay, so that shows you that this great whore that sit upon many waters is clearly showing you, all right, that it's Babylon the Great America, man. Which is Rome all over again. You know, Rome had dominance of all these other nations, man. You know, they'll conquer territory, create a garrison there, all right, take control of it, recruit local fighters, you know, train them into Roman fighters, you know, and make them pay taxes, man, and have military bases there, you know, everywhere else, okay? There was a military base in the Roman Empire when Yahushua was on the scene, and it was mainly, they had a base, the Romans, in Capernaum, man, okay? Nothing new under the sun, okay? So this whore is sitting upon many waters, many people, man. All right, let's go back. Okay. Oh, wait, that's not this one. Let's go back now. All right, Revelation 17. All right, and 2. All right, Revelation 17 and 2. Okay. Let me start with verse 1. Revelation 17 and 1. And there came one of the 7 angels, which had one of the 7 vials, and talked to me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore, America. All right. That sitteth upon many waters, and America does. Sits upon many nations of people. All right, just like the Roman Empire back then. All right, and this is Rome all over again. All right, who sitteth on many waters. Verse 2, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication. All right, fornication, man. All right, taking their philosophies, their doctrines, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. All right, drunk on what? For the philosophies, man. All right, that's the difference between these other nations, for example, like China or Iran or someone like that. If you want to do business with them, all right, and you want to trade in oil or this or that, they're okay with that, man. Let's just get down to business. You know, you give us the goods, we give you the money, this, that, and the other. But when it comes to America, you know, and the so-called white man over there, all right, he will basically say, all right, we'll do business with you, you do business with us, you know, but we've got to have a military base in your country, all right? You have to sign this document. You have to get USA aid, okay? That USA aid will give us access to your resources, you know? So we're going to take your resources out of your country, you know, to pay off the debt, etc. They did that with Congo, man, last year. And, you know, America signed a deal with the Congolese, President Felix Kizier, I think his name is. All right. And that whole agreement was about basically the resources. So they probably went to them because there's a war going on between, you know, the Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, with Felix Tshisekedi as the president, and the M24 or M23, I think they're called, and they're from Rwanda. All right, now they say that they're there for freedom fighting. No, they're there for the resources, because over there in the Democratic Republic of Congo, they have copper, lithium. They've got cobalt. These are all things you need for laptops, mobile phones, etc. America did a deal with them, all right, and it had an agreement to end that war. That war's still going on, by the way, all right, but you guaranteed, search and do your own research, I guarantee that agreement was something about, oh, we're going to take some of your rare earth minerals as a part of the deal. That's what comes with dealing with Babylon the Great, all right, which is America. So these other nations are seeking alternatives, you know. When you do business with this man, you have to take on everything, not just money transactions. You have to take on his doctrines, his philosophy. When you go to the UN, he would say, listen, in this UN resolution, he will tell countries that he's doing business with, don't vote against this or don't vote against that in the UN. You know, this is what are strings attached when you do business, all right, with Babylon the Great, which is America, all right, aka the revision of the Roman Empire. That's what they do. So this is the reason why these other kings, all right, they've basically been sipping, you know, this Babylon juice, okay, and it ain't working for them, okay. They're getting scammed. They're getting tariffs put upon them because of this joke Donald Trump. You know, they've allowed their women, you know, to work, you know, to have a liberty, feminism. They push feminism. You know, that's why over there in Japan, you have an epidemic of men having suicide and killing themselves out of loneliness. All of this bullshit came, all right, when this devil, all right, put his military, his philosophies, his presence in all of these nations that he set upon. Okay? Okay, verse 2. With whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. Yeah, they've sucked on that Babylon juice, man. All right, and some of them now, they're looking at it like, you know what, this was a bad deal. I wish we didn't even have anything to do with these people. And that's what's happening within this what's it called, this beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. There's a division that is happening when it comes to you know, America and them, you know, having this partnership with NATO, man. All right, with them 10 horns. All right, they're in one unison with this devil. All right, they all together, America, all right, that 7 heads and 10 horns, they are together in a covenant. And we've seen it when you had 9/11. 9/11 was one of the first times that NATO actually used their powers, all right, where they have one clause that says if anyone attacks us, any NATO member, is attack on us all. They used that after 9/11. And guess what? 9/11 was an inside job, you know? So when you saw them American troops and then British troops go over to, you know, Iraq and Afghanistan, okay, it wasn't just them. You had you know, Belgian troops over there. You had French troops over there as well. Okay, they're all joined together in wickedness, man. All right. Whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk. All right, with the wine of her fornication, her doctrines, man. Okay, remember that when you look at this. Let me see, at this image. You know, that one of the brothers did. You know, look at her philosophies, man. That's what he's talking about. Her wine of her fornication. He's gone around the world and he's implemented these philosophies, all right, with these other nations, you know, and these other nations are not profiting off it no more. Okay, and remember, they're the world reserve currency, America, the American dollar. But covetousness, adultery, lies, idolatry, all right, religion, especially with this Roman Catholic Church, which is called the false prophet. You know, that's the spiritual side of this beast. Okay, and most of all, his democracy. This attempt around the earth. Well, when you had the Hong Kong riots of about 4 years ago, all right, what were they arguing about? No, we want to be free from China. No, Hong Kong is a part of China. We're fighting for democracy. Where did they get that from? You know, where did they get that from? That's why over there in China, all right, they're communists. They don't have this democracy stuff. They got a one-party system, and they got the head of that party, all right, and you have to do as you're told. Okay? Same with North Korea, they have that as well. All right? And they know that if they did not have nukes, all right, regime change would have happened to them a long time ago. Because all these other countries, that's what America's done. Nothing but regime change. All right? To do what? To influence them, all right, to have these bullshit philosophies. All right? The democracy and so forth. All right? This is the wine of her fornication, man. All right? And that's why the relationship is not looking good at the moment. Okay? Let's go back here. Verse 3. All right, Revelation 17 and 3. So he carried me away in the spirit in the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast. A scarlet-colored beast. You know, scarlet is that a color that is like red. All right, and what is it synonymous? What is it synonymous with? All right, wealth, power, but also wickedness and sin. All right, it's a scarlet-colored beast. All right, a woman. All right, sat upon a scarlet-colored beast. All right, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Names of blasphemy, man. All right, and what is one of the biggest blasphemies that they did? All right, they whitewashed the picture of Yahweh Shai. You know, they laid open the book of the law. It says that in Maccabees. All right, Maccabees. First Maccabees, what, 3 and 48. Okay. They laid open the book of the law, and the heathen sought to paint what? The likenesses of their images. Alright? This is First Maccabees 3 and 48. Alright? And remember, back then, this was the Greeks, but the Greeks were who? Edomites, man. Alright? Same spirit, that same devilish, cunning serpent spirit is in them. You know, back then. And you know, that happened back then with the Greeks. So, hey, you know, history repeats itself. Nothing new under the sun. They committed blasphemy by doing this, and later opened the book of the law, wherein the heathen ought to sought to paint the likenesses of their images. Okay? And that's why when you put in the Messiah, alright, just put the Messiah. Or you put in Jesus the Christ, you know, and that's the title, not a name. Christ means anointed, Jesus means Savior. All right, what image is going to come up? This guy, you know, and this guy was a man that lived. This man actually lived. Cesare Borgia, man, the first Rodrigo Borgia, the first white pope's son. Okay, and they did. Another blasphemy that they've committed is to say that the small hats, all right, are the children of the Most High. That's a damn lie. Okay, all right. Revelations 2 and 9, man. I know the blasphemy of them who what say they are Jews. I don't know, but are the synagogue of what? Satan, man. Okay, so they've committed untold blasphemies. Okay, untold. Go back. Alright, Revelation 17 and 4. And the woman, alright, and we know that woman is America, Babylon the Great, was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. You know, and it said decked with what? With gold and precious stones. That's all the wealth that the power and the wealth that America, Babylon the Great, has acquired. and you know, over the years. And if you look at the whole business of regime change in Latin America, all right, it was always regime change to stop revolutions from happening. Okay, it was to stop revolutions from happening, man. Okay, that's what it was about. These you know, all the stuff that America has from Latin America and the regime change, and you know, they've made money out of CIA pumping drugs, you know, in America, using Colombia as a gateway. Now it's Ecuador as a gateway. You know, all of the wealth that they've had stolen from the Gadites, you know, all the treasures and all that stuff. That's what this represents. Their power, their wealth. All of that was stolen goods, man. Just like the Roman Empire. Okay? But your power is waning, man. And one of the reasons why your power is waning, all right, is because exactly how Rome fell is exactly how America is falling as well, man. All right? It says they're having a golden cup. You know, and when you have a cup, what is in that cup, man? Filthiness, man. You know? The wrath of her fornication is her doctrines, man. Her philosophies, man. And all these other nations have been sipping off that cup, man. You know? They've been drinking on this Babylon juice, man. Alright? Cup in her hand full of abominations, man. And filthiness of her fornication. Okay? You know, all these other nations have been sipping of that cup. That's why, if you go on, there's other scriptures that say that when America's, you know, Babylon the Great is destroyed, hey, the people around the world, they're going to mourn for her, man, because, you know, they're not going to be able to make money off of America no more. I mean, look at China. China is in direct, is directly there in the crosshairs of America, man. Because if you look at what happened in Venezuela, all right, that was a power play. All right, I'll show you. I think I've got this video here. I'll show you a bit of it. All right. Yeah, this is it. It's a good bit. This is a good video because it shows you how, and it kind of gives you why they did what they did in Venezuela. This will show it to you, you know, and this is why there's going to be a great backlash. All right, against this great whore, you know, that's sitting for many wars. You know, her allies are getting sick of her, and her enemies are getting sick of her. All right, let's play this.
In Latin America through what we could call a Trojan horse strategy.
China is involved in 37 ports across the continent. Much of China's lithium comes from the lithium triangle of Chile, Argentina, and Bolivia. Latin American agricultural products contribute to almost 1/3 of China's food imports. And major Chinese brands like EV manufacturer BYD has set up factories in Brazil. Meanwhile, Trump invokes a foreign policy strategy dubbed the Donroe Doctrine. It aims to get China out of what Washington considers its backyard. Could Venezuela be just the start?
The key country that we have to keep our eye on right now in Latin America is Panama. This is going to be the most important country in this burgeoning duel between the U.S. and China, because the United States is threatening to shut China out of the Panama Canal Zone. And if they do that, that would be potentially an existential threat to China's trade relationship in this vital part of the world.
And by the way, they've done that already, because when Donald Trump was first in power, all right, and from Apostle Tahar on down, we believe that he's Nero coming back in the reincarnation. He's moving like Nero, walking, talking like him. And most importantly, under Nero, the great persecution of Yahushua's, the believers of Yahushua, who were called Christians, all right, that was instigated by Nero when he burnt down Rome and blamed it on the Christians. And that's when the devil came down on us, having great wrath, man. All right, and they slaughtered many Israelites because of that. Okay, But this video is showing you that this devil doesn't want anyone in his backyard. Alright? And who is in his backyard? It's mainly the Northern Kingdom. Alright? He knows who our people are. America, this great whore, knows that the people in this lithium triangle, where they have all these resources, alright, that they're Israelites, man. Alright? This is the reason why they did what they did with Maduro. It was a power play. They did not want China and Russia doing business in their backyard, which they think all of the Americas is their backyard.
The Trump administration has also threatened Cuba and Colombia, sparking protests in those countries.
没有哪个国家可以充当国际警察。
Why is Latin America emerging as a key theater in U.S.-China competition? The United States' direct operation in Venezuela, capturing President Maduro and his wife, has generated international shockwaves. There are many reasons behind it. President Trump revealed his intentions just days after the operation.
One thing I think everyone has to know is that if we didn't do this, China or Russia would have done it. And if China or Russia were a next-door neighbor, because essentially this is not around the other parts of the world so far away where you fly an airplane for 24 hours before you get there. This is sort of a next-door neighbor if you think about it. And I told China and I told Russia, we get along with you very well, we like you very much, we don't want you there, not going to be there. And if we didn't do this, China would have been there and Russia would have been there. Maybe they both would have been there together, but they're not going to be there now.
Much has already been uncovered about China-Venezuela ties. China invests more in Venezuela than in any other Latin American country. China was Venezuela's largest oil buyer, accounting for around 80% of all oil exports. And Venezuela has been supporting de-dollarization by pricing oil in yuan since September 2017, when Maduro declared the country would free itself from the dollar tyranny. Venezuela and China had strong ties, but it is really just the tip of the iceberg when one is examining the strides that China has been making in Latin America over the last decade. May 2025. President Xi Jinping hosted heads of states and officials from 28 Latin American and Caribbean countries in Beijing, while dishing out $9.2 billion in credit. The forum takes place as country leaders mull over how to deal with tariffs from the United States.
霸凌霸道，只会孤立自身。中国同拉美和加勒比国家都是全球南方重要成员。独立自主是我们的光荣传统，发展振兴是我们的天然权利。
China's trade with the region has grown sharply over the last decade, mainly from rising imports of the region's farm goods like soybeans and beef, along with other imports like crude oil and critical minerals.
But did you hear what the president of China said? He said, we are not going to be, bullied by anyone. We have a strong partnership in Latin America, and no one's going to get in the way of that. That's basically what he said. Okay? And if you think that it's it's because the Republicans are in power, this is all them. No. Click it forward here. This is a woman, all right, from a few years ago who was a part of Biden's administration. Listen to what she says. All right.
Fueled unease in Washington, even under the Biden administration.
Today, I am here to announce that great power competition is back in the Americas. The hammer and the sickle has returned in full force, and the Chinese Communist Party's first order of business is to own Latin America, our backyard. China has secured a presence in Latin America through what we could call a Trojan horse strategy to become the #1 trading partner in our region. Let me repeat it. Our hemisphere has been invaded by China, and they are now the #1 trading partner in the region. #1 trading partner in the region. 20 years ago, they traded $12 billion. 20 years later, last year, they hit $450 billion. That is a 3,000% increase. 3,000% increase.